All right. So, Phil, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, no, my pleasure, man. So, I'd like to start out with how you got here. Like, what is your climb? What is your story? So, please.
Yeah, I grew up wanting to be a pilot. So I went into the Air Force right out of high school, and everything around my life had been like, I'm going to be a fighter pilot. And after being in the Air Force for a few years, I decided to change directions for reasons we don't need to get into. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to be a business guy instead. And I was actually working night security at the time, and I found an HTML book sitting on somebody's desk. And I was like, I'm going to read that. And over the next 2 or 3 nights, I literally worked through the entire, I mean, it was like a Bible, right? Worked through that entire thing, and I was just hooked. That was about 25 years ago. Started building websites for fun. Next thing you know, I had a couple people who wanted to pay me for it. Next thing you know, I had a job. Only had that job for about a year and a half, a real job in the industry. And then in the dot-com bust, they shut their doors, and I said, "Hey, I'm gonna start my own thing." And that was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I started my agency, and it's been quite a wild ride over that period of time for sure.
So, you started with the HTML book. You're a web developer. Did you have the traditional agency story where you've worn every hat along, the spectrum?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as a kid, I was very into art. I was a very good drawer and everything. So, I started off pretty strong on the graphic design side. And as things kind of moved along, I would learn different programming languages, but usually worked with other people doing that side of it. So I started off creative, got into the development, and then ended up saying, this information architecture, the UX stuff is what I really enjoy, what I'm uniquely good at. So I did that longer than anything else, but eventually even replaced myself on that side. But yeah, everything from design, dev, UX, project management, sales, I've had to wear every hat there is.
And you've done it with like multiple agencies, not just one, right?
It's kind of tricky. I mean, I try to simplify the story by saying I started this agency 20 years ago, but it's gone through iterations, and technically it's been multiple entities. So I started Creation Chamber 20 years ago, and then I ended up acquiring another shop in town. We treated it as a merger, created Xylem CCI out of that. Xylem was the name of the company that we acquired, and CCI was Creation Chamber Inc. And then ended up kind of doing a reverse merger of sorts. But really, what it meant is I just split ways with my partners. I restarted the agency under the name Distil, ended up changing it back to Creation Chamber for a few years to simplify that story again, right? It's like
Yeah.
started Creation Chamber in 2001, and but then I think it was last year we're like, Creation Chamber is no longer a good representation, a good name for what we do, because there's so much more like marketing involved in our services today versus just website design dev. So I decided to switch it back to Distill, and I'm pretty confident we're not changing it again.
That's a lot of changing. So what is the largest agency you've grown it to, like insofar as employee or revenue count?
We were at our largest, gosh, it was would have been like 11 or 12 years ago now. And that was, 70 full-time employees in-house in one space essentially. And then, contractors as well outside of that. But for the past decade, we've tried to be boutique. So, we're 4 full-time employees, and then everything else is contract, and we're all remote.
Really? So you just removed as much overhead as you possibly can.
Overhead for sure. I mean, 10 years ago, that was the passion because that was not a big focus when we were at our largest. I mean, I like to tell these little stories. Like I remember when we finished a new office space. This one was like 10,000 square feet, from scratch, brand new space, and we needed Ethernet, run to all of the desks for our computers at the time
Mm-hmm.
because Wi-Fi wasn't that great. And I think we paid something like 12 grand just to run Ethernet, and then we had 3 full-time employees who were just our network administrators internally. So just to handle all of our end user support and that sort of thing. So when reinventing about 10 years ago, it's like, man, I'm using Google Apps, G Suite, for everything. I mean, literally replaced 3 full-time employees with a Google account that had shared drives and email and all of that sort of thing. So yeah, at that time it was like the passion, the focus, the idea here now is don't pay for anything that we don't have to pay for. Keep that overhead as low as possible. But at the same time, that's not really the driver for us being small right now. That's just to keep things fun and high quality, because those are things that I think are very difficult to keep under control as you grow, especially at the rate we were growing back then.
Why do you think that is?
Well, number one, you've got to add some layers of hierarchy, some kind of oversight, some kind of management. And as soon as you do that, now you're talking about having different levels of experience or expertise on the team, right? So you're going to have junior employees, and if you want to grow as quickly as we were, I mean, it's hard to find good candidates, and so there's a lot of trial and error in the hiring process. And I think even the best hiring companies in the world, like Zappos, they still go through this too. But when you find a core team that you can work with low turnover, or in our case, no turnover for an extended period of time, year after year after year, you work together really well. You know that everybody is an A player within their realm. The quality issues, the stress of running an agency almost disappears. We get busy sometimes, busier than we would like sometimes. And I think that's really the primary area of stress. Everything else is so easy because we're just very dialed in.
Got it. So you have more of, instead of an army, you have like a SWAT team.
SWAT team. Yeah, I like
And
that.
what type of work do you guys do with the four versus what you had? Is it essentially the same?
Well, I would say the landscape of digital marketing has changed since then, since 12 years ago. I mean, Facebook was brand new at the time. So there are slight differences right now, but more than anything, we try to have a bit more of a focus today. Half of our business is still website design development. The other half is some constantly morphing collection of digital marketing services. And so that could be lead generation. We do try to focus mostly on the B2B side right now. So that works really well with the lead generation programs we have and can offer to our clients. We're doing a lot of SEO. And then we do some limited amount of paid ads, both on the Google side and the social side. But those four full-time employees, I still wear a number of hats, but my main area of responsibility is business development. Carol heads up all of our website stuff. Every single website build that happens through her and the team that she has working under her. And then Tiffany oversees the vast majority of digital marketing services that we do. And then Aaron is doing organic social for our clients.
Got it. What's your sales process for business development?
Honestly, it's mostly referrals right now, which is ironic because I put together last year a very formal LinkedIn prospecting and full sales life cycle online course.
Yeah.
And it's not even terribly cutting edge at this point. It's still a fantastic program, but you already see so much of it now over the past year. These practices have become kind of commonplace, so it would kind of need to be updated. But anyway, very robust program to build a massive pipeline. And I don't use any of it in my business anymore because we've got just the right amount of work coming in from referrals and repeat business with our existing clients. It's an easy sales game for us, for sure.
That's awesome. God
Shooting
bless.
fish in a barrel, low hanging fruit, whatever you want to call it.
So before you had the robust referral network, what would you say is a sales process that you employed? It sounds like LinkedIn was effective at one time. What are some of the best that you've seen in this space?
Well, this one's kind of tough today, but I would say the majority of our sales success pre-referral came from cold calling or knocking on doors, essentially, searching out kind of the ABM model, the account-based marketing, where we would say, we want to work with the Denver Broncos. How can we make it happen? And that wasn't me personally drumming up that initial sales opportunity. It was actually my girlfriend, wife at the time, who was one of our employees. But she'd be reading the Denver Business Journal and say, sounds like these guys are going through some growth, just got some funding, or whatever the case, or it just sounds like they'd be fun to work with. I'm gonna figure out who we talk to over there and drum it up. And it was a fantastic way to do it because, number one, you're going after exactly the people that you want to work with, the ones who excite you, versus waiting for things to come in and then you say, yes, let's definitely work with this law firm that specializes in mergers and acquisition. It's something where you may not have any passion around it.
Mhm.
So that was the whole program that we had in place that led to the massive growth. We were doubling in size every year. We, got to that 70-person mark, and the clients that we were working with were extremely exciting. It was well-known brands, a lot of international restaurant chains and professional sports teams, and it was a wild ride, a lot of fun.
Would you recommend companies go after those marquee accounts, or was that more, work than worth?
Oh, worth every penny. Again, I think the key is, if it's a company you want to work with, those are the ones you should be putting the most effort into, and put all the effort into it. Now, one thing that we didn't have then, still don't really have now, but that is more commonplace and, as more intelligent, is a real niche. And that, changes the equation a bit. I mean, you don't just sit down and read the DBJ, Denver Business Journal, for those who don't know, and, kind of look across industries and, vertical and horizontal. Instead, it's really knowing your niche and maybe doing trade shows. I mean, I think the stronger the niche you have, the easier sales is going to be, and that's one of the huge benefits of kind of going that route.
You've never attempted to choose a niche?
I've tried repeatedly. We try constantly, but I'm a very particular person to a fault, and so we'll say we've got criteria for it. Number one, it's something that we want to be passionate about as a team. I mean, that's already difficult, because one thing I've always admired / been very confused by is business people who get into a certain industry and work their butts off in it day after day, even though my perception is that's boring as hell. My cousin he heard of an opportunity where storage tech here in the Denver area was selling off their carbon fiber manufacturing division that they used to use for their robot arms. And he's like, I'm going to buy that, and then I'm going to find clients who need carbon fiber parts. And he had no experience in that industry whatsoever. And I just remember thinking, that doesn't sound terribly fun. Like, are you passionate about carbon fiber or manufacturing parts? And he's like, no, but it seems like a business opportunity. To me, like, no, I've got to really it's got to be something that I want to do on nights and weekends, like outside of work, be involved in that particular area. So that immediately eliminates like 99% of our potential niches. And then what's left, you've got to say, all right, which ones are already flooded with providers like us, like highly competitive? Which ones are going to be a pain in the ass, just a crappy industry for one reason or another? Chiropractor is one of these where they tend to have no money, so if you want to be kind of a commodity player in that space, you could make some money off of it. But for us, not really wanting to compete so much on price, that eliminates a lot right there too. So there are just so many things, and I have literally printed out like the United States government list of industries, like classifications for every industry for businesses, and read through the entire thing. How about this one? How about this one? How about this one? I get through the end and I'm like, shit, nothing. I got nothing.
That's so funny. I related to that too. I there's not a specific niche, depending on however you want to say it, that I could ever select. And every time you think you're going to go to one, me personally, I'm instantly just drawn back. I'm like, nah, this is going to be too boring. If we only do HVAC websites, or we only do lawyer websites, and some companies have made hundreds of millions of dollars doing this, and they've done a great job. But my brain doesn't work that way, so I can relate to that completely.
Yeah.
What about specificity insofar as service? Have you explored that at all?
Yeah. So the horizontal niche.
Yeah.
And I would say we're relatively strong on that. And there are certain areas or certain periods of time where we've actually gotten even stronger. And so last year, when I put together that online course with the LinkedIn prospecting and sales program, we said, this is something that we can provide to our clients as a done for you service. So we started doing that for a number of our clients. And it was great. You got a startup cost just to get things going. So to set up communication assets, everything that you're going to use as part of the sales program. Maybe there's a certain piece where you're training some of the client contacts on how this program works as well. So it could be 5 or 10 grand up front, and then 3 to 5 grand per month recurring. Pretty good business in that, but ran into some challenges with it. It's very difficult to, I think, treat that as a done for you service, because unlike some competing programs, there's one, what's it called? Linked selling, I think, is really good, really well known. They do a lot of this, but all they do is put together an automated sequence that you use on LinkedIn, and then that sequence is supposed to result then in people saying, yes, I'd be willing to jump on the phone with you. And then boom, they're done. So that's their done for you service, is they just arranged a phone call or a meeting for you. Our program went well beyond that. That was just the first of 3 phases. And those phases 2 and 3, very tricky for us to like come into any other industry and be able to do those things, because you've got to have really good subject matter expertise, understand their business really well to have real conversations. So that's where we ran into some trouble with that. And we don't do a whole lot of that as done for you anymore. But, website design development, I think that's been the strongest horizontal niche that we've had over the years. And I don't just mean website design development, but really specializing in particular platforms. We were one of the world's largest, if not the world's largest, Adobe Business Catalyst partner. Hundreds and hundreds of websites that we built and deployed on that system. So really well known, and that definitely gave us a strong in terms of referral business from Adobe and anyone else who needed a website built on that platform. HubSpot now, we're a HubSpot partner, we're a Shopify partner. So we kind of have platform expertise there, and to some extent, website type, e-commerce websites, for example, is something we're very strong with.
Okay, so you have kind of like nodes along that horizontal chain that you can go with, and it sounds like one of your strategies is making strategic partnerships with the platforms that you're building on top of.
Yeah, that's always good. I mean, we like to get preferential treatment for one thing, but it's nice
that's hard to get sometimes. How do you go about it?
Yeah, it can be tough, but once you show that you're serious, like you're dedicated to a platform and you have the ability to bring in some sort of volume, I think that opens doors. But
so with Catalyst, so I know HubSpot, they have their hierarchy, right? You go from bronze, gold, diamond, platinum, so on and so forth. Is that something that you sought out with Catalyst, right? Where you're like, all right, we're going to build X number of sites, we're going to be super strategic, or was it more organic?
It was pretty organic. Now, I was actually pretty good friends with one of the top Business Catalyst partners, also in Denver. And so he kind of brought me into that mix. I was pretty vocal about some of my concerns with the Business Catalyst platform. And so then we were invited to go out to Adobe in San Francisco, a group of about, I think, 5 of us, and kind of help them evolve the partner program. And that just led to a lot of other stuff. But along the way, I was doing pretty good volume of site builds on that platform. And then I ended up buying that other agency that actually made the introduction. So overnight, that kind of doubled the amount of volume that we had with them.
Oh, smart move. So it sounds like you've made some acquisitions. How many acquisitions have you made?
Technically it'd be 3, but they're all different types. If you think like true M&A, it would just be that first one where we acquired the other agency. I mean, that's where we had an attorney, probably cost us $30,000 in fees, and then went through rebranding and all of this other stuff. Whereas the others, it was more like, I'm going to buy your book of business. So you're going out of business. I'm going to take over all of those websites. We're going to do a nice soft handoff with the clients, and then some sort of a transition so that they go from understanding that you are their partner to feeling like, okay, now it's Distil, something that would just make it easy. But those, were minimal in terms of legal and paperwork, because we were just taking over some clients.
Do those work out well?
The first one didn't work out well, the big one. It was a huge learning opportunity, but man, we could talk about that for hours, because it was a fascinatingly negative experience.
All right, let's open that up, man. Let's go deep. So I guess, all right, let's just look at that. Like what happened, and what could somebody learn from your failed business relationship, is what that sounds like to me, or however you want to frame that.
Yeah. So many different dynamics that went into this, but essentially things were pretty hot in terms of this industry at the time. Creation Chamber, my agency, had some great big brand clients, and we did some good creative work for them, but I still felt like we were a whole lot stronger on the development side. And there was this competing agency in town called Xylem, and they did like the Chipotle website and Gorilla Glue and a lot of stuff for major brands, and they were super creative. And so there was a little bit of envy there. And at one point, one of our mutual friends said, "Why don't you guys just merge?" And I started to explore this, and I was really wanting to sell the agency at the time anyway. And I felt like if we were going to sell it to, say, a big advertising agency holding company, then a company that was more marketing, more creative focused, like Xylem, would be more appealing than a development shop. That was that was a big assumption, which may have been one of the initial mistakes. So the idea was I owned somewhere in the neighborhood of 90% of Creation Chamber at the time, and then Xylem had two equal partners essentially. So we brought these partners together. We all then had shared equity in the new entity after we acquired. I owned just under 50%. Big mistake. Somehow, I believe someone's always got to be in charge, and I ended up making a list of rules after this whole experience, and one of them was always make sure somebody owns 51%. It doesn't have to be me, but somebody needs to, because somebody's got to be able to make decisions. So with those partners in place, we all at least were on the same page that the whole idea of bringing these companies together was that we could sell it to a big advertising agency holding company for millions of dollars, and then we could all go our separate ways. So shortly after the acquisition came 2008, and things started to crash. So we had an initial group of meetings with Omnicom, which is a big ad agency company. They flew out from New York. We met with them multiple times about acquiring. Things were looking pretty good. And then things really just fell out of the economy, and they said, we're not going to be doing any acquisitions for the foreseeable future. And then the partners basically found ourselves in a situation being in business together, and we didn't particularly like each other. I mean, I had kind of fundamental issues with a couple of the partners. Others I thought were maybe just, I don't know, inadequate for what we needed to be doing. At the end of the day, I said, I don't actually want to run an agency with you guys. This was just so that it was a means to an end, and we've got to figure something out. So shit hit the proverbial fan.
How was that received?
It's a long story short. I couldn't convince the rest of them to kind of get on board with what needed to be done. And so I said, I'm bowing out. I mean, I know that I could start from scratch if I wanted to and have more success. Then it felt like an anchor to me. So I resigned and spent the next year trying to get out of my equity position in the company, which cost, I don't know, another 20, 30 grand in legal fees right there. And it was a major pain in the butt, but a good learning experience. It was a miscalculation on my part. It's probably the closest that I would classify anything that I've done in this business as a failure. But failure, that's an end game, not a waypoint. So it was mostly just a really big miscalculation on my part, and a lot of it I think came down to ego. So I learned a lot about that in the process, and definitely came out the other side a whole lot stronger, and things have been smooth sailing ever since. But that was a huge factor in the new way that I ran the new version of the agency afterwards.
So many questions based on this. One, did you have a gut feeling before you went into that situation of like, this doesn't feel right, but based on the logic I'm laying here, I'm going to move forward with it anyway?
Honestly, I don't remember. I certainly should have, but shortly thereafter, one of the partners, and I won't say which one, just so that I don't hurt any specific feelings, but I later came to find out that he's really good at gaining your confidence, but you've got to close a deal very quickly, otherwise people will catch on. And that's kind of what happened. We pushed this acquisition through so quickly that I still thought he was a fantastic resource. Come to find out, I mean, he ended up doing almost nothing, generating almost nothing after the fact. And I can't even begin to fathom, like, post acquisition, what our burn rate was like. I mean, we were just burning through cash. Payroll, our monthly payroll was some like in $250,000 every time that we had to cover just for payroll on a monthly basis. Each of the partners, I want to say we were at something like 175K in base salary, and then we were also doing distributions, right? But at pre-merger, I think I was paying myself about a 90K salary.
Yeah.
And I liked to be, I mean, I didn't need that much, and my distributions were great. I mean, I would write myself checks for 30 grand or whatever for distributions on a regular basis when I wanted them. But that was probably one big red flag that should have jumped out at me when we were talking about, okay, what are we going to pay ourselves? We need to put that into our documents. And they said, well, we do 175K each. And I was like, whoa, wow. I was like, can we do less than that? And they're like, not really. And I'm like, all right, sounds like we're all making 175K, pencil it in. And I mean, that's a big problem just for burn rate. But come to find out, my CFO, who is also one of my best friends, said they weren't paying themselves 175 grand before that conversation. So, I mean, that's a due diligence thing. That should have popped up anyway, but it should have been a red flag. Instead of saying, all right, well, we're going to do this, it should have been like, let's take a step back. So
it sounds, yeah. And I've been through one merger, but I've experienced some other things that were red flags at the beginning that with another partner though. So it's not just my own reflection of that situation. I've had the luxury of two different perspectives of like, all right, we're both about to buy into this, new marriage. How does this feel? And it's really good to be able to, volley those thoughts back and forth because you both are sharing in that experience. But one thing I've noticed in what you're in your climb, it sounds like before you were really eager and aggressive to grow.
Yeah.
What changed?
Probably a number of things. I mean, number one, our sales model. We had a team of salespeople then. And so that just naturally fueled the growth. Number two, again, and I think I would call this ego and probably nothing more, other than maybe it's fun. It's fun to grow. It's fun to feel like you're, following in Steve Jobs' footsteps of just like creating this massive thing out of nothing. So it was exciting, but it made you feel important, made me feel important. And I also realized that our profit margin had gone down steadily over that period of time. And I wanted a return to the higher profit margins. I found it very easy to make money right up to the point where I did that acquisition, right up to the point where I brought on those other equity partners and no longer had complete control over how we were going to do everything.
Profit margins, what to you is like your best profit margin, and what does a healthy profit margin now look like for you?
Now is our biggest profit margin that we've ever had. And I mean, I think that's true for a lot of agencies anyway. It was, with everything from server costs and infrastructure, whatever else back in the day that nobody has to deal with today, it was tougher back then. But with Creation Chamber in the earlier days, I don't remember exactly. I want to say we were probably in that 30% margin range. And post acquisition, we were right around zero or below zero. I mean, I shouldn't even laugh because it had a very big impact on a number of employees, and I take that very seriously. We had to go through rounds of layoffs and whatnot. But I did learn a lesson that it is, I think, more difficult to generate profits when you're a bigger company than when you're a smaller company. And why? I mean, more moving parts, more complexity. It just makes sense. But these days we're, 45% margin.
Wow, that's a fantastic profit margin.
And if we could niche, if we could automate more, templatize more, I mean, sky's the limit there. So
what you mentioned models. Has your model from when you first started out to now, has that drastically changed?
It's not that much. When I first started out, there was no real concept of digital marketing. I mean, Google Ads didn't even exist. There was pretty early on this thing called GoTo that Google stole their whole AdWords system from, and later lost in court too, when they were sued over that. SEO was kind of a thing, but it was very rudimentary. So those weren't even really services that we provided to anybody. It was just website design development. And the fact that half of our business now comes from digital marketing services means, that's the part that's really evolved.
What about what is the price difference from what you used to be able to charge versus now?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I remember in our first couple of years in business, let's say our first year actually, when we were trying to do real sales, we were doing basic websites for like 10 grand a pop, corporate websites, easy stuff. And then we were doing e-commerce websites, and it was very easy to sell those for, north of 50 grand. And then we got to the point where we were doing even functional transactional websites, but not even the complexity of e-commerce, and being able to charge close to 100 grand for those. Those were not crazy prices. Xylem, the company that I acquired, I think they were probably charging about that much just for a Flash website where it just got cool animations and stuff. But over the years, then I saw like a lot of these basic websites. Some of our prices had to come down in the 5 to 6K range. However, it was a whole lot more efficient because we weren't doing these in raw HTML. The content management systems that we have today, the platforms like Squarespace and Adobe Business Catalyst and WordPress and all of these would just make it so much quicker and easier. So much is templatized. I mean, we used to start from scratch on every single website. Now you've got like Bootstrap and these frameworks that just allow you to hit the ground running. So it was a trade-off. I mean, that average price may have come down, but at the same time, I think we could be more profitable because it took us a lot less time to actually build them. And in my case, I was getting my hands dirty again in this second decade of our existence. So able to build some of these websites and not having to pay expensive developers to do it meant a whole lot more money would kind of stay in the hopper. But I'll say today, I feel like things have gone back up. We're charging the same kind of prices for like e-commerce websites and other transactional websites today that we were way back then.
Based on that, though, would you say the value is displaced, right? Value back then was, more on the technology side, whereas value now is, where would you see it?
I think back then it was kind of a scarcity thing for a lot of clients. They wanted to work with somebody who knew what they were doing, and there weren't a lot of places that knew what they were doing. And today, I think, well, in any time, I think that what people are willing to pay, what the market will bear, comes down largely to just what the economy looks like at the time. So I think that in terms of value, you can offer a whole lot more for less now, just because platforms do so much off the shelf. And so if you want to put in additional effort, that's just bells and whistles. You can kind of go above and beyond. But I think reputation still is going to be paramount in a lot of these situations, and having the track record that we have, I think, allows us to charge a premium, just because people trust that we're going to get it done. We're going to get it done right. We're going to be enjoyable to work with. So I think we still charge probably higher than the typical market rate, but I know that we're not the most expensive either.
And it reminds me of a saying I learned early in my career. In this business, it's not what you can do, it's what you've done.
Yeah, I like that.
That's what you're going to sell on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
based on kind of the ups and downs of that, the pricing model, and speaking to that value, where do you see this space going insofar as, service, web development, web design?
I'm a bit of an amateur futurist, so I read a lot about the singularity and automation. So this industry is not going to last too much longer in my mind. I think it's got a very definite endpoint here coming up where everything's going to be automated. Think about what we do. I mean, there are already platforms where you can just answer a few questions and it'll build a website for you. And not something ugly, not necessarily even something rudimentary. It's not exciting yet, but it's like, okay, this is 1.0, and it's already doing stuff where it can go out and pull in your social profiles, pull photos together, and construct navigational menus, populate content, and boom, there's your website. The farther we get into some of these niche platforms like e-commerce, whether it's Shopify or inbound marketing with HubSpot, they do so much more out of the box that this is why I, as a non-real computer programmer at this point, am able to do so much with these platforms, because it's drag and drop. It's WYSIWYG. You don't have to get into code much anymore. And what that means is ultimately you could kind of cut out a lot of the agency expertise requirement and allow clients to just do some of that stuff directly. And on the marketing side, I mean, everybody knows, like when it comes to Facebook and Google in particular, they are all about AI. So how much longer are agencies like us going to be needed to set up Google ad campaigns and optimize those, or to run social media programs? I mean, that stuff's going to be automated. So um, what does that mean for all of us? You know, the people in this industry, the agencies, and who knows? That's the kind of the magic question. It's kind of the unknown. What comes after that? Once 85% of our jobs are automated, replaced by computers and robots, I mean, there kind of is no next thing. So I spend some time just thinking about what I want to do once I feel like this industry is kind of reaching its endpoint. And, you know, it's something, obviously, I think what's least likely to be automated. And there are very few areas of expertise where there's anything there. But, and it comes down for me, I'd like to not have a computer in my next job, you know, have a smartphone and that's it. I would like to start working with my hands again. I don't know, build boats or something, you know. I guess I'd need computers for that these days. But.
Yeah. Yeah. But I upset a friend one time because it was when I first started, which was absolutely brutal, you know, on my own. So it was like 11, 12 years ago. And he was a landscaper, and he was doing my yard at the time, and he had a rollicking business. And I told him, I was like, yeah, man, sometimes I just look out the window and I'm like, man, I'm jealous of you. You get that weed eater. And he turns over to me and he's like, fuck you. He's like, you think what I do is easy. You don't realize all the intricacies and all the things that I've had to go through and actually be a professional and a craftsman at my job. I just don't mow yards. And I was like, all right, okay. So it was just this moment. So when I hear the boat builder thing, I get it, and I totally get it. And I think we misplace a lot of the things that we understand about like our craft, because you are a seasoned craftsman in what you have done, and I think the things that you're capable of are just, I mean, it's got to be insane, man. I mean, hell, you're on this show, damn it. But I mean, along those lines, in all seriousness, I mean, you've acquired agencies, you've grown with them. Have you looked at other things outside of just the service side of doing the work?
We've over the past 20 years actually constantly explored doing, you know, platforms or spin-offs. So we've done quite a few of those. Earlier on, there was no WordPress, there was no Shopify. So when we had clients who said that they wanted to be able to update their websites, we built our own content management system. And it's actually still running a lot of websites very poorly today. Like sometimes I'll go out and search for it by brand name. It's called Power Trip. And I'll find the websites that are still on it. It's hilarious. But it was also running denverbroncos.com, Noodles and Company, Jamba Juice. And so it was a nice little platform that we had created. And then we created our an email program, so like our own MailChimp at the time, called LoudRoute. We created our own e-commerce platform that ran some really nice e-commerce websites that was called Spree. We created like flash games that we would just sell one off. A lot of sports teams and restaurants would put those on their website. So there are a number of things that we've tried over the years, and some I think even in the past decade here that are a little less like web app kind of focused stuff that's just kind of out there, but I don't know, they're not coming to me at the moment. But love doing stuff like that. It's kind of, I don't know if it's smart that we do so much because it's kind of shiny object syndrome for me, and I feel like I should just focus, but they're fun.
I have a long history of shiny object syndrome.
Shiny object.
I've lost a lot of money on shiny objects, man. Yeah, some just wild harebrained ideas. Have you had any of those where you're just like, oh, this is the next big thing, everybody, and you sell everybody on it, and you're like, no, man, this is crickets.
Absolutely.
Is there a story in there that you could share about one, you know, specific?
Well, we already talked about my LinkedIn or my sales program, you know, the online course that I put together last year. So I was like, this is the future of our company, actually, because this is going to totally productize us. It's so easy to templatize, to automate. And for various reasons. I mean, number one, just short attention span guy here, and shiny object, like seeing other things. And then, just kind of getting pulled away, like, all right, we've got to work on these big projects, get them out the door. I need to close some more revenue or whatever it is. And next thing you know, I'm like not putting any time into the online course. And then I say, let's put it on our YouTube channel, let people do it for free, and let's refocus. So that was a huge whiplash for my staff last year.
Oh yeah, I've gotten plenty of those, man. I've spun up an entirely separate company that was going to focus on branding, and we were, this is all this company's going to do. We're going to do this, and I'm all gung ho about it. And then like it just lost its flame. So I try to be as careful as possible now, as that example I just stated, and just look at that like, all right, am I doing this again? Like, am I going down that road? Like, are these the signs? Because have you ever heard, I can't say it, and it's an Arabic saying that it's hero in the beginning. Have you heard of this?
I don't think so.
So, all of our stories were heroes, right? We're the movie star in our movies, and the hero in the beginning is, you start something, you are just completely energized, everything is going to move in the direction you want, and you are absolutely unstoppable. But as the story goes on, you're just you lose energy and whatnot. So it's the hero in the beginning never finishes, and you essentially fail in the story. So there's a whole other Arabic thing you can look into, and more reasoning behind it. But that's something I say to myself now when I get into that situation. I'm like, am I just being a hero in the beginning? Am I actually going to see this through? And then logically, I think it's something we have to condition ourselves with, where we look at all of the things in the history that we've had of taking that pattern and realizing, am I just going to waste a bunch of money? Am I going to waste a bunch of time? And am I going to piss off some people and tell them like, yeah, I'm not interested in that anymore?
Now, are you actually able to talk yourself out of it though? Or are you always
Not
like,
always.
no, this time it's different?
Sometimes, yeah, absolutely. There are some times where, yeah, it's this time is different. And then now though, I've surrounded myself with people that know of my addiction to shiny things. So there's this mass amount of accountability just around me, whether it's my wife, business partners, all these other people that help me. Like, okay, all right, well, like, and they're gonna tool around and they're gonna ask me all these questions, and then based on that, like, okay, this is a real one. I probably have one of those calls, and it pisses me off. It really stabs my ego when they're like, "Oh, is this a shiny thing?" I'm like, "What the fuck?" No, this one is different. Okay. So yes, so I think that is my biggest strategy to get around it. Yeah,
that's a good plan. I should definitely tell my staff, my circle, that they probably know. They see this coming a mile away. They just don't say anything, maybe.
Well, along those lines, do you consider yourself a good boss?
Well, let me say this. I think I'm 100 times better boss now than I was 15 years ago. I think I was a horrible boss in the beginning.
Really?
Not so much, a dick or anything. Just had no idea what I was doing. I had no formal training as a boss, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, let alone, and even as a web developer. I was just a hack. So that definitely, it was like I felt like I was picking things up as I went along the entire time, and made tons of mistakes earlier on. So now I try to be a whole lot more cognizant of like supporting my team and understanding that really that's kind of my top job. Sales is my focus, but just helping everybody else be successful in their role is kind of the best way for me to help the agency be successful, and to help myself be successful. So I try to support them a lot, but I tell you, they're workaholics, and it's hard to keep up with them. So I always feel like I'm kind of dragging. I'm the bottleneck to some extent, So I don't know how they feel. I think part of me is afraid to ask, because if you're afraid to ask, I think you already know the answer, and you don't need people to tell you. Guilt yourself into changing, and I do that constantly. I think it's better when I don't make them actually complain, and I just know that I can do better. But yeah, how about you?
Myself, I think I ask a lot, like, but I think at that point, I think there's they could be a bit intimidating, like, all right, how am I doing with this? but yeah, I think I always think I can be better, right? So if it's 1 out of 5, I think I give myself a 4, and I think anybody that gives himself a 5 in that rating probably is more than likely a 1 or a 2. So that's something I look at. We started doing this on our reviews where we're reviewing people. We ask them, all right, how is the company being managed? How do you think your manager is doing? So these are all a part of it. But I'm always looking for ways to improve. And I know our audience is like, how did you 15 years ago to you are today? Like, what were some of the signals that you got to correct behaviors and get better? Was there a business coach involved? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I like to pick up a whole bunch of little things from different sources, you know. So no programs really that I've gone through. I haven't worked with. I guess there was a period of time, maybe like 12 months, where I had a coach, but it was more like a personal development coach, not really related too much to business leadership. And honestly, um, I think the results of that were dubious anyway. So I think a lot of it just comes down to mindset shift, you know. And for those first 8, 9 years, like I said, ego drove a lot of what I was doing. I wanted the money, I wanted the success, I wanted the stature, the recognition. And then after that, after having to reset, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to give a shit about the employees. And I mean, yeah, it really drives so many decisions. Like, how much do you pay them? Well, I pay them as much as I possibly can because they deserve it. How much freedom and support do you give them to do their jobs well? As much as possible, because they've shown that they can be trusted and that they're very capable. So uh, I mean, I want to believe that that is just it's transformed me, from a leader, from a boss, like kind of night and day over the past 10 years. And again, this is a big thing for me just in life in general. Instead of getting down into all of the use cases, uh, Pat Lencioni, Death by Meeting author, I love his stuff because he gives you the mindset. They're very small books, he gives you the mindset, and you're like, that answers so many questions. If you just get into the mindset, then you don't have to be trained on every single scenario. And a lot of business books and a lot of people want to train around every scenario. Now, what would you do here? But if they say this, I mean, it's just too complex to ever master something like that. So for me, it's just change the way you think about something, and everything tends to fall in place.
I think it's a great piece of advice. I know too many people. I know people that have read. We actually had somebody on our show. I think I can't remember the number of books. He's actually a friend, and it was like 300 books in a year or something wild like that, right? Just an insane amount of books. And not him specifically, but I've asked others, how much have you gained from reading all those things? And a lot of people, you ask them questions like, I don't even know. Like it's there. So it sounds like your approach is more of like a buffet where you have these different little items. You're not grabbing one solid framework and saying, all right, I'm just going to change everything and move in that direction. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, for me, it's less like it's not lesson based or what's a better word for it? Like tactic based. It's more inspiration based. That's how I learn. That's how I apply. I do remember several years ago, but this was already after I started, you know, uh, created that focus on really caring about the employees and trying to help them. But um, Tony Shea, Zappos, reading his story, and so many parallels between what he was working on and what I was working on. And in fact, I mean, this is kind of interesting, but when I first got into the business, I created some banner ads and was using them for one of my businesses. And I used this like link trading network. So I'd put my banner ads up there, take some code, put it on my website, and then it would show other banner ads from other partners in there.
Mhm.
And I had some of the most successful ads on there. And so they featured them in the top 10 performing. And then they did an interview on me. That was Tony Shea's first company.
Mm.
And he was I want to say he would probably say he was kind of a dick boss at the time and just, really ran that into the ground. And I was like, oh, I really see that. And then when he did Zappos, totally different mindset. And it was all about culture and, being nice. And yeah, so many parallels. But after reading that book, again, that was one of those things just kind of made everything fall into place at an even deeper level. And so that led to so many things that we were doing internally a couple of years ago in terms of culture and programs and that sort of thing.
So did he interview you?
I don't remember who it was. This was like 90. 99,
Huh.
maybe. I can't remember how big they were at the time. They ended up selling that to Microsoft, I think. But
That's what I wonder. There's always these stories of these CEOs, even like Reed Hastings from Netflix. Like he sells his first company, and then he's like, they reflect on it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, man, I was a total asshole." And then they have this different approach. It's like I don't know. Is that they get bored on the beach, sipping on the mai tai, and then that happens?
I think I don't know. Obviously, everybody's got a different story, but I think for a lot of people like me, there's a certain glamour to entrepreneurism, and a lot of people are like, I want to do it because I want to be successful. I want that image, and that image can make you make a lot of bad decisions, have the wrong focus. And then I think once you start to trust yourself and what you've achieved, no matter how big or small, then you probably have the confidence to say, all right, I can do things right now, and with Reed and Tony Shea, it's on a whole different level than what we're talking about here. But I think that once you reach that point where you feel like you don't have to show off and you understand more about life and what's important, it's just a whole lot easier to say, all right, we're going to have a focus on being a good boss, being a good person. And
And you got to reset.
yeah, yeah.
You were in the Air Force. What role did that play though in setting up a structure and being a leader and a boss?
None, because I was never really in a leadership position. Yeah, it was a weird little 4 years that I did there, where I enlisted. I was a crew chief on C-130s. Then I went to the Air Force Academy. I was there for a year and a half. Then I resigned from the academy, had to finish off my original enlistment. So I never made any headway in doing anything. I never had anybody who reported to me. I didn't have enough long-term relationships with anyone within the chain of command to like pick up great leadership habits or anything like that. It was 4 years that were fun at times, not so fun other times, and I was already a very like organized, disciplined. I don't know, discipline probably be a bad word for me. I was already a very like organized and structured kind of person, so that didn't even come from the military. I'm not sure what I walked away with from the military, honestly.
Sound like Johnny Cash, man. It's kind of similar to his story. What would you say to, granted, in some of the novice futurists that you have, what would you say to an agency that is starting out today?
Honestly, I would say niche. I would say, templatize, automate, I guess. Automate might come secondary, but templatize, the less rework you have to do, the better. And those things all go hand in hand. If you have a strong niche, then you can easily templatize and automate around it. And it will make all the difference in every aspect of what you do. It'll make sales easier because people will see you as an expert in that field. You'll be able to target your marketing. So go to a trade show specifically for that. I mean, you don't have to get complex. For us right now in our business, if I wanted to do a Google ad or a Facebook ad, it's a tricky thing to do because what are we going to put in there? Need a website? Who do we target? Are you a business? I mean, there's no focus to it. So the sales becomes very easy. The stress that comes from custom work goes away. Everything is super easy because you're like, yep, we've done this 1,000 times, so we can do it 1,001 times with no challenges whatsoever. Makes it easier to train around. I think that's the single biggest piece of advice I could give.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's pretty sound advice. And where do you think like more experienced and older agencies are missing out today? Where do you think it's, where they could improve?
What I see all over the place is agencies and businesses in general that still aren't doing things the most modern way. Like we still have clients who have like, I don't know, Exchange email servers. That they may not be true, but it certainly was even a few years ago. I'm like, why are you still handling your own email? Why do you have servers in your office? That's archaic. And the way some of them spend money, it's like we're all living in the dot-com boom or something. And like, there are a lot of people, especially, they could have been in this industry for 15 years now. But like, you actually haven't seen a really bad time yet. And it happens. There's always going to be the next recession, and you've got to be ready for it because it hits people hard. When I started Creation Chamber, that was because my employer had to shut down due to the dot-com bust, and everybody else was going out of business at the time. There was this other player, one ended up being like kind of our primo competitor in town, and they were riding that dot-com wave, man, like just having so much fun, and the office environment was just like a circus, and they almost didn't survive. I mean, they were down to just a few employees and just losing money hand over fist. And at the same time, we were picking all those clients up. I mean, brands, Einstein Bros, and I don't even remember all of them, but we were scooping them up, and then we were scooping up their employees as we grew too. So it was like we were a black hole just sucking the mass out of their sun. We were growing at the same rate they were shrinking, and it was all because they were in party mode, and they weren't thinking about the rainy day. So that's definitely something that's kind of stuck with me. But I think you gotta run a smart business whether times are good or bad. And we spend very little money here, no matter what. We're just very conservative.
Do you keep a large reserve as well?
We do. My sister has a CPA firm. They're our main accounting and bookkeeping firm, and she makes us keep a lot of money set aside. Otherwise, I wouldn't. You know, I'm like, why don't I take it out and then I can invest it? And if there are bad times, I'll just stop taking money out, or I'll put some back in if I need to. But she's like, no, no, no. She's super disciplined. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So she sets up accounts and keeps it all there.
It's consistent.
um, I think she keeps like, I don't know, 6 months or something set
Oh
aside for
wow,
us at
that's
all
a great
times.
reserve. Wow.
Yeah.
The
Um,
I wanted to ask about business partners. Do you currently have any business partners?
I own 100% of the equity in this company, but I have it's called the phantom stock plan. And I think that's a horrible name, by the way. I think virtual stock plan is better. Phantom sounds like
Yeah.
so underhanded. But basically means two of my directors are treated like they are equity partners. And so they have the equivalent of a certain percentage of the company. It eliminates tax issues for them, because we did go that route a little bit. But it's like, if I give you stock, then IRS says, well, how much is your agency worth? If it's worth 2 million and you gave them 10%, they have to pay taxes on all that, even though it's just equity. So that's a problem. So we ended up going this route, which is, if I take any distributions, I give them their pro rata distributions as bonuses. So it's like they're getting distributions, even though it's technically not a distribution of profit, it's just a bonus. And if I sell the company, they will get their pro rata shares from that sale price as well. So most of the upside, but it's just kind of a rearranging of the tax liabilities. Instead of paying tax on stock grants up front, you'd pay more as income when we sell the agency, versus like long-term capital gains, which is what I would pay.
Wow, that's a strong plan. I like that. Did you come up with that on your own or borrow it from somebody?
Actually, this was something that I had come up with even years ago, and went this route. And then when working with our law firm to set up a new program, they were like, "Why don't you just do a phantom stock plan?" And I was like, "Oh, so that is an acceptable thing?" Because I thought it was a harebrained idea I had, but they're like, "No, no, do it all the time." So then, yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly what I had envisioned, and then they just put it together, so it was very structured.
Other than your employees, what types of qualities do you look for in business partners?
um, there was a time when the main value that I got out of a business partner was having somebody that I was responsible for other than myself. And I'm not talking about like wife and kids, but I'm saying within the business,
Mhm.
because otherwise it's very easy for me to just kind of sit back and chill.
Mhm.
But if I know that I'd be letting somebody else down, then I work a whole lot harder. So these days, though, it would need to be somebody who offers a very unique value to the company, something that I can't already do or don't want to do. So they need to be really good at their job, be very responsible. And that's what I have in both of the directors that are on staff now. One of the big lessons I learned with the first acquisition, that fell apart, is there are a lot of shady people out there. And I won't get into specifics just because I don't want to dig that all up. I don't want to open myself up to any liability. But I mean, you should have serious trust concerns about anybody you're thinking about going into business with, because anybody who's excited about making money probably has a very good chance of being willing to cross a line that I just don't want to cross anymore. So got to be people who, good people who you can trust on the financial side.
Yeah, I think likability is so important to me. Like, and maybe I'm just, I don't know, an emotional person, but I know people that absolutely hate their business partners and they're just like, oh, it's just a means to an end. It's the function. It sounds like you kind of went through a phase like that. But I look at, even with clients, if I can't take a call from this person on a Saturday, it's like, I don't want that in my life.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, it's one of those things.
I did a whole interview one time on why you should never have a business partner. And this
Oh,
was just a couple of years after that whole first crash and burn. But no, I mean, I was pretty passionate about it. And so it took quite a while to ease back into that mindset. But
although you technically do not have a business partner still.
right. And again, I created this list, a checklist. I want to say it's like 10. If I ever want to have a business partner again, here's my checklist of things that need to be in existence, and all lessons learned from that experience. What was the one I said? Somebody's got to own 51%.
Mhm.
Somebody. Otherwise, you're just going to have problems getting things done, making decisions, because nobody really has authority in that case. Number two, this is what I learned when I said, I want us to just part ways. I want to do reverse merger, buy me out. And they're like, we don't have any money. We can't buy you out. I'm like, great. What's unique about a business partnership is that there is no vehicle within our law for you to be able to exit out willingly. Like in a marriage, you can say, hey, I want a divorce. Let's split it. And you go to court. You can't do that with a business if your partners don't want to do it. Say, sorry, you own your stock. You could give it back if you wanted to, but otherwise there's no way to really do a divorce unless you build that into your partnership agreement. So I was like, I always want to have a buy sell clause in there. And that's a really fun one to play around with. The dynamics of it are super interesting. But to say at any time, any partner can make an offer to the other partner to say, I'm buying your stock and this is how much I'm paying you per share. Do you want to take it? And they either have to take it or they have to reverse. They have to counter with something, I think it was slightly higher. But so if I came to you and said, I want to buy out your 50%, and I'm going to pay you, I'm going to try to lowball you, I'm going to say $1 a share, you could say, nope, I'm going to buy you out for $1.01 a share. So it's, built-in motivations to not be able to lowball people, but it always gives you the ability to exit that partnership if you want to, in the most fair way possible.
Yeah, it's fixed.
That makes sense.
It does, yeah. So it sounds like it's a fixed protection where at any point if you, hey, I'm going to buy you out for $100,000, and you're like, well, I don't have any money to counter that, so it looks like you're buying me out.
Yeah. In which case, if you don't have that much money, then maybe that's a great payday for you, and you're going to be happy. But
yeah,
but at least, yeah, that's an interesting out. So stuff like that, I think.
I'd love that
pretty
list.
important.
Yeah, can you send me that
Okay,
list?
dig it
I'd love
up.
to post it in the show notes.
Yeah, let me see if I can find that.
Okay, yeah. All right, man. No, this has been great. I noticed one other thing. I doing some research. The researchers sent me. You have a family show that you're putting together.
Right. Yeah, my family's kind of social media heavy. This is a new thing, so we don't have like a big following or anything. But
Yeah. Well, this is how you get
we
it,
just
man. You plug on
decided.
stuff like this wherever you can.
Yeah, but we have a lot of fun with it. And the video stuff in particular, we picked up last year and just really started having fun playing around with it, buying equipment and just learning how to edit. We're still awful at it, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of fun. So it makes it worthwhile. So now we go on our trips and we record stuff and just try to make fun episodes out of it. I mean, we probably got like 40 episodes on YouTube. My wife runs a lot of it. And so like the Instagram posts on a daily basis, she's doing, because I don't even have social apps on my phone. I refuse now. But yeah, it's mainly kind of the YouTube thing. So we're having fun and just seeing where we'll go with it.
Okay, right on. And yeah, I wanted to give you this space to plug anything that you would like to plug. This is your space, man.
You know
Pedal.
what? I don't really have anything to plug, so let me just use this period of time to do a shout out for my two directors that we've been talking about a lot in this episode. Carol Lemke, Tiffany Worthley, I mean, they're just ass kickers every day. And so much of our success comes from what they're doing day in, day out. So shout out to both of them. They deserve all the credit.
Right on, man. That's a really classy move. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you think the world should know or they'd like to say?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered literally everything in this interview.
So
I
I
hope we can do
exhausted
another.
you, I take it.
Why don't we? We'll just have to do it again, and we can deep dive into something like you and I. When we talked before, actually, the first time I mentioned it, it seems like so many agency people get on podcasts, and in their interviews, it's a focus on all of the wins and not enough on the losses. And like I'm as guilty as anyone of doing that over the years, trying to make it sound like I've just been such a rock star in this industry. But no, I mean, I had crashed and burned and made so many bad decisions, and I am such an awful entrepreneur in so many ways. And I think it's good for people to kind of hear that, especially if they feel the same way and understand, okay, I'm not inferior. I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing as much as anyone does. So yeah, we should do one just kind of focused on all of this shit.
I love
All
it,
of
dude.
it.
All right, I'm gonna hold you
Yeah.
to that. Yeah, after we get this one, I think that would be great. And no, absolutely, I think psychologically, especially as marketers, designers, developers, we're always like looking at what the other person is doing. So there's only showing the best, where that can be so detrimental when it's like, no, we all for the most part pretty much suck the same. Just some of us suck a little bit less because they've either worked harder at it or there was another advantage that you just haven't uncovered yet.
Yeah.
So dude, I think, yeah, that'd be great. I'm gonna take you up on that. We're just gonna have a full like hour of, and I'll
Bloopers.
bring my failures to the table. I'll literally write them out in a list. It's gonna be long. I hope I don't, overwhelm with it, but I'd love to, yeah, go back and forth with them.
That'd be fun.
Right on. All right, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot. Next time.